March 2011, tax will be payable only on income above 59,750 for taxpayers below 65 and 93,150 for those 65 and older. A third rebate of 2,000 rands per year is proposed, increasing the tax threshold for taxpayers aged 75 and older to 104,261. In other words, the over 75s get an additional tax break. An increase in the annual tax-free interest income to 22,800 for individuals below 65 is proposed, and to 33,000 for individuals 65 years and over. The Treasury is exploring the possibility of incentivized saving schemes for housing and for education as alternatives to these exemptions. The tax-free lump sum benefit upon retirement will increase from 300,000 to 315,000. The following capital gains exclusion amounts will be increased from 1 March 2011. For individuals and special trusts from 17,500 to 20,000, on death from 120,000 to 200,000, on disposal of a small business when a person is 55 years or older, from 750,000 to 900,000. The annual trading income exemption of public benefit organizations will increase from 150,000 to 200,000, and for recreational clubs from 100,000 to 120,000.
Welcome back. With me in studio is Rob Stretch of Ernst Young and Professor Jackie Aarendse from the University of the Witwatersrand. In our Cape Town studio, Mike Teuchert from Grant Thornton is also standing by. Rob, let's kick it off with you. We've spoken about the rebates and some of the tax relief, and you were again alluding to the fact that we are going to be paying elsewhere. Fuel levies increasing. We're seeing levies for the Road Accident Fund also increasing. One positive thing that did come from the Minister is that the tolling system is going to be done away with, at least for now. So we'll hear news on that a little later.
Right. Yeah, I think what we're actually finding that there's a trend over the last few years is to start catching taxes in all different places. Yeah, we've seen it now in terms of there's supposedly a tax coming in on the electricity, and that's to fund the potholes. Now, do they keep that separate, or does it all go into the one big pot? We've seen it with the additional taxes now on fuel. Where does it go? We've seen it last year with the additional carbon emission taxes on new motor vehicles. Yeah, it all just goes into a pot and not for a specific purpose. So I think there's a danger that these amounts are simply being collected and not being applied for a specific purpose.
Do you think they need to be streamlined, and perhaps they need to focus on the fact that the fuel levy, which is going to increase by 10 cents a litre on the 6th of April this year, needs to be then allocated to infrastructure and transport spend?
Well, I think that's ideal, and especially it's the fuel levy, and it's 10 cents for the fuel levy and then 8 cents for the road accident fund, of course. So it's an extra 18 cents per litre that's going to be added to the cost to consumers. And I think the key thing is that these taxes should be earmarked, and that's a big argument, the environmental taxes as well. We're probably going to move into a carbon emissions tax, further carbon taxes next year. And the big worry is that these taxes all just go into the same pot. And so they're used to supposedly motivate environmental agendas. But the concern is if it just goes into one big pot, what's that money really used for?
Yeah. I think just to stress, as far as the carbon emission tax on motor vehicles, what is the purpose of it other than to raise more taxes? Because the reality is, one will go through the newspaper and there might be 400 or 500 models of vehicles that are on sale. Now, apparently there's only 16 that are exempt from the carbon emissions tax. And the reality is that most of those vehicles, because of the poor quality of the fuel in South Africa, you can't use more fuel-efficient engines. So it's a catch-22. So if this money was being used to better the quality of the fuel in the country, then yes, there'd be a purpose.
And perhaps, it's an interesting point because it seems that Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan is trying to be very innovative in ways to raise more taxes and to get more revenue coming to the fore. Mike, what do you make of all this? And again, we allude to the fact that, as Rob said, one of the trends that we have been seeing, we see taxes on various issues, and it all goes into one big pot and not really streamlined to various divisions of the economy. Do you think that in the next budget, or that we should be hearing news on that soon, to perhaps streamline revenues far better?
Look, realistically, we've had situations where they've always earmarked specific taxes for a specific project, and it just hasn't occurred. I think what's actually been happening is we're actually complicating our tax system with a numerous number of taxes, and you actually want simplification. I think it does suit the minister by doing it this way, because these taxes are relatively unseen. You don't realize how much you're actually paying at the end of the day. Another tax that they're throwing in is the luxury car excise that they're putting on it, another 22%, or between 20 and 25%. So again, you're continually seeing a lot of taxes being collected, but no real relief at the level where individuals are paying normal tax. And yeah, I think it's not actually 100% correct. You get these false impressions that these taxes are going to be earmarked for specific projects, e.g. fixing potholes. When the road accident fund came out, the whole idea was that it would, the fuel levy came out, it was going to be there for road infrastructure. We haven't seen that at all. So, yeah, I think we're actually being sort of misled in a way.
Don't you think it's also perhaps misleading, because we are seeing some reprieve coming through on the income tax front, but then we are paying more and the cost of living is increasing? How do you see the play between those two factors?
Well, most definitely we are seeing a bigger tax bite out of everybody's income. And you're getting a situation where it's the same crowd of people that are paying for most of it. Yes, some of it is consumption-based. But those are the people that can consume. So there does seem to be a bigger tax take on the higher income earners, I think it's a problematic in that when somebody starts realizing how much they are paying, it could be somebody could then decide to economically disinvest out of the country on a tax basis. Maybe not a great idea, but it doesn't make an attractive place to stay if you're going to tax everybody to death.
Well, Jackie, and as we said earlier, it really goes for a specific pool of people in the country. What do you think SARS needs to do to increase the pool of taxpayers? I mean, that then goes back down to unemployment, it goes back down to the skills scenario, job creation, and increasing that pool.
Yeah, sure, it does relate to job creation and just getting more people to be economically active and at the level at which they're paying taxes is the one side of it. The other side of it is the enforcement side, and we have had word in the budget again, as we have had every year for the last few years. And of course, Pravin Gordhan has a good history in terms of improving tax compliance. And we have had word again that there'll be further focus areas in terms of enforcement, audits, etc. And that also is important in terms of growing our tax base, because certainly if everybody was on the tax base that should be paying tax, then in theory at least, if not in practice, and hopefully the theory would become true, is that everybody would pay that much less.
Okay, Rob, your sentiments on that, and I think we also need to perhaps focus on some of the things that really impact the revenue streams in South Africa. Firstly, the social security reform in the country, which we know Pravin Gordhan said we are definitely going to be focusing on. It was all about inclusive growth, and this is one of the big themes that also filter through apart from the job side of things. The implementation of NHI, National Health Insurance, the transportation scenarios, and also the new growth initiatives as well. And just alluding to increasing your tax pool, how is all of these strategies that have been put in place in this budget going to perhaps result in higher revenues in South Africa?
Yeah, I think the writing seems to be on the wall that the higher revenues are going to come through increased taxes, because it's, the way we're growing our employment base and growing the economy, it's not going to be sufficient to fund this. So it would seem that it's going to come through higher taxes. There's alluded to in terms of increase in VAT, which I thought was they'd never do it. There's also maybe what they call a surcharge on income tax, around those sort of things. But I think the inevitable is going to be higher taxes all around.
And especially when you look at the sin taxes, and that's what they're called, smokers and people who enjoy having the drink after work every evening are going to be paying more. Let's take a look at what Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan had to say.
The transfer duty exemption threshold will be increased from 500,000 to 600,000 rands. Excise duties on alcoholic beverages will be increased between 4.5 and 10.3%, an increase of 6.4 cents. Wait a minute. This is the part you need to consider before you go and have a drink. 6.4 cents for a 340 ml can of beer, 13.5 cents for a bottle of wine, or 2.86 cents for a bottle of spirits. Taxes on tobacco products will increase between 6 and 10.2%, 80 cents more for a packet of cigarettes.
Let's take this question to Mike, and because you live in Cape Town, I'm sure you're a wine drinker, so I'm sure you're not too happy about the 13.5 cents increase in a bottle of wine. Give us your sentiments about the sin taxes, and no surprise there, because that is one easy way to increase taxes and to increase your revenue pool.
Yeah, look, I mean, we've seen it all the time. I think South Africans just about immune to the increases, and I don't know if I don't know if it does really affect the demand. The reality is with alcohol, it is problematic in this country, and yeah, we need to also do something about it. So maybe there is a call just on a social level to increase those taxes even higher. But then again, you know, you got quite a big industry out in definitely in the Western Cape with the wine industry, but the whole liquor industry is a substantial industry employing a lot of people, and at the same time you don't want to put that out of business. So I think it is a fine line, but yeah, smokers and drinkers have always come to understand that at this time of the year they're just going to end up paying a little bit more for their vices.
And perhaps a reality going forward as well, Jackie. Your thoughts on this? Again, you were talking about an easy way to bring in the revenue.
Well, I think, you know, taxpayer tolerance that comes to mind, and I think when you're talking about sin taxes, as Mike said, it never seems to make any dent on the demand. People just absorb those tax increases, and they, you know, I don't think that the demand is actually negatively affected. So it is an area where it's fairly easy, as it were, to recover additional taxes.
And Rob, not only that, but also bad news for gambling winnings. Also set to perhaps dampen the demand for gambling, and obviously it is a problem in the country as well.
I think the minister alluded to it some time ago after someone had just won the Powerball of 70 million, and saying, you know, this is an easy tip picking.
Yeah.
So the announcement is that from next year they're going to start taxing a straight 15% on gambling winnings over in excess of 25,000. So if you're going to win the lotto, do it before then.
The interesting thing about that is, sorry.
Go for it, Mike.
Sorry, if I can just chip in there. The interesting thing about that is that he's not actually going to be allowing anybody any losses. So it's a bit of a one-sided affair.
Well, that's the way it goes, isn't it? Well, look, we're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, we'll be focusing on the National Health Insurance Scheme and the impact that it could have on tax revenues going forward.